In Genesis chapter 1, verse 27, we see a real breakthrough in the time and culture. To speak of man as being made in the image and likeness of God. I mentioned earlier how ancient people often made their gods like humans. For example, think of the images of Roman and Greek gods like Zeus, Apollo, and Diana. But the biblical or Jewish account makes us like God. This term image gives us the idea of an icon or a stamp. It's not just a shallow image or a shadow, but rather a strong image. How are we like God? Well, consider how we can love. We have intellect, free will, self-determination, and we also have a spirit in the sense of a spiritual rather than a bodily soul. Cardinal Ratzinger, before he was elected Pope Benedict XVI, claims that an image points towards something. So we point toward God. We're not just enclosed in ourselves. Further, as relational beings, we point toward the relationship of the Trinity as God. The divine image in human beings is a reflection of the Holy Trinity. The image of God exists in our mind because it can remember, it can understand and love God who made it. Because we are made in God's image and likeness, we get our dignity from God, not the world. This means that nothing can take that dignity away from us. Regardless of whether we are male or female, black or white, young or old, poor or rich according to the world's standards. Further, our dignity also shows the unity of humankind, all of us created from one ancestor. This means we are called to live in solidarity and in charity. We're not called to racism or sexism or any other ism of the world that seeks to separate us from each other and make distinctions about the other. Finally, in this verse, notice that the first man is called Adama, which is Hebrew for soil, hence the name Adam. Many times names in the Bible are full of meaning, often referencing the nature of one's birth. Here we can see that Adam is, in a sense, birthed or made from the dirt or soil. In verse 25, both male and female are made in the image and likeness of God. So there's no distinction between the sexes or genders in terms of dignity or equality in the eyes of God. Now, the Bible calls the first human being man, or Adam, Adama in Hebrew. From the moment of the creation of the first woman, it begins to call him male, or Ish in Hebrew, in relationship to Isha, or woman, or female, because she was taken from the man, or Ish. Thus, we can see how man is now known in relationship to the woman. Now, God is without gender. In fact, while we're used to referring to God through masculine pronouns, and God is referred to as Father by Jesus himself, Scripture gives God both paternal and maternal attributes. Some of these maternal attributes are less familiar to us, but I've given you some references in the notes. So, how are men and women both the image and likeness of God? Father John Ricardo explains that neither male nor female fully embraces all of the image of God. Each gender gives some of the image and likeness, but only together do they have the full image and likeness. In fact, our sexual complementarity reveals something about us and about God. That is, we know we are made for union. Just as God, as the Blessed Trinity, is a communion of persons, so we are created to have a communion of persons. So, in summary, man and woman are unified because of their common humanity, that is, their same flesh. But there is also a duality because of both our masculinity and femininity. We also see in that first chapter how humans collectively are given dominion over the animals. So while we are creatures of God, we also share in God's caring for creation. Verse 28 adds the word subdue in the RSV or Revised Standard Version in reference to humanity's relationship to the earth. To have dominion over and to subdue shows humanity's authority over creation. To subdue in the Bible means to bring something into service to oneself. So, dominion is not about exploiting, abusing, or neglecting, but rather harnessing, using for good. This idea of caring for something owned by another hints at an image of royalty. Those who are made in God's image and likeness will reign over creation on behalf of God. So we are called to be stewards of creation by caring for it. This is what was spoken so beautifully by Pope Francis in his encyclical Laudato Si, or On Care of Our Common Home, which came out in 2015. In other words, God calls us to care for the planet. At the same time, we are not called to worship nature or creation. In verses 29 and 30, we see that part of our role as stewards was to use only what we needed to sustain ourselves. So only take or eat what you need to live. As you can see here, we can eat of any plant, but neither humans nor animals eat animals, and this is before the fall. So initially, we were all vegetarians. Also, notice how Adam and Eve are given specific roles to play as stewards of God's creation. But as we'll see next week, we'll find out how well they do or they don't do this, and how this impacts humanity.